So for our final segment, we're getting into our faith and culture segment, and we really want to be present in the segment. We want to talk about real world things that are going on in our lives today, like right now. And yeah, so with these topics, we want to be creative. It will never be easy because these are, hot button sensitive topics, but we don't want to shy away from them and not speak on them. So our topic for today, we are talking about June, and June, of course, is Pride Month. And yeah, I know there's a lot going on. There's a lot of press about it. There's a lot, just yeah, it's happening. So how should we, as believers, similar to Louis' question, respond to the movements of today and the laws of today? And yeah, I would love to just hear your guys' thoughts so that we can encourage people who aren't talking about.
Okay, I'm gonna go first.
You got this, Abby.
We all were like, not it. Um, so this really hit home this year. I feel like more than ever, Pride Month has really infiltrated my life. I feel like in the past, maybe it's just been a slow creep. I don't know, but all I know is that in March, no, April, May, maybe it was May. So it was just the month before. But you know how all stores start a celebration before it happens. So my kids had a random day off from school, and so they were with me, and I was going into Target, and there was a giant Pride display, and my kids were like, "Oh, look at that! Oh my goodness, it's so fabulous! Like you love rainbows, mom. Like, should we buy you all these shirts?" And I was like, "No," and they were like, "But you love rainbows!
What's the issue? What?
I mean, why wouldn't you?" And they're not wrong. I do buy pretty much every rainbow I see. So I was like, well, this is a different rainbow. So I could not believe that I was having to talk about Pride Month with my children in Target. I don't think that we've really talked about uh, the how many letters are there now? I'm gonna like mess up LBGQ
Yeah, yeah.
plus B. Anyway, we have not really discussed that a lot with our children. We just try to hold off as long as possible. But I was actually a little bit convicted that this is the world that my kids are living into, and it really is becoming more and more prevalent that this is being talked about. And so we did have just a conversation about what it meant, and then we also I followed up with that was something that Jesus, and well, when God created us, that he had different plans for man and woman, and so that this was how just unhappiness and sin has really changed and warped what God has to be a perfect thing. So it was really messy, just as what I just said was. And I was just couldn't believe that I was having to do it in Target, and I was pretty mad about it, honestly. So I think what I wanted to share today about this is that it's so very much in our faces, and you can go either two directions in my mind that are not great, and I'm going to hope to try to find a middle place. But the two directions that I think I'm seeing today are one being because we're being so infiltrated by this culture and by the world that lies to us, that many believers really have misunderstood what loving our neighbor really looks like, into allowing everyone to do whatever they feel good about. I actually had a really great conversation with a friend online just a few days ago. I felt like this once again was a really timely topic, because I just asked her like how she had come to these conclusions of inclusivity as being the equivalent of love. And she actually admitted to me that she had not spent a lot of time in scripture, but that instead she had talked to a lot of people and read a lot of people's books. And so I was like, thanks for sharing how you've come to these conclusions. Maybe you can spend some time in the word, and maybe I can spend some time in the word, and maybe we can talk about it. So hopefully
Yeah.
that will happen. So if you too are feeling a little confused because the world's message is loud, it's literally in Target, it's literally on our apps and our phones and our commercials on TV. and you're starting to feel a little confused about where we stand as believers, then please get in the Word. There's a lot being said about how we should interpret Scripture on this, but just remember that the truth is actually a lot easier to see. And when we have to manipulate Scripture and twist it and turn it and go to all these different sources to make our message work, then that's probably not great. So just remember that too. And then I think the other side is hate. So either like, being super inclusive or being super hateful. And we have to remember too that we are all sinful and we are all fallen short of the glory of God. And so we have to show mercy in how we treat others who are struggling in this area, both those who are just, maybe on that inclusive route, or those who are literally struggling with these issues. Like, these are real, they really are a thing, and we should show compassion. So I think that those are kind of the two sort of negative sides that I've seen, but I want to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, well, we're talking about how do we as believers navigate Pride Month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pride Month. And I think that is one of the things that has shifted is as I think the way we talked about this before we started recording was as culture itself becomes, culture is a thing in motion. It's not static. And in this particular area, for sure, the culture has gone from, hey, let's be inclusive to let's celebrate. And that's really what Pride Month is. Pride Month is a celebration of these alternative ways of understanding and living out sexuality. For us as believers, sexuality is rooted in God's order, God's design, God's purpose from the very beginning, which we can read about in Scripture. So for us, nothing has changed in terms of the reality of what God intends for men and women. But culturally, we've kind of swung around to where this is now a celebration. And I'm going to be a little bit dramatic here. But it's just to sort of set the direction. Like I said, I was just reading in Daniel, and then there's a chapter in Daniel where the king Nebuchadnezzar creates this giant statue, and it's not just an alternative god. Then he tells all the people, hey, you have to worship this. You have to celebrate. When you hear the music, you have to bow down. And if you don't bow down, you're going to stand out, because you're going to be that one or two. And sure enough, there were 3 people that didn't bow down, and they stood out very quickly. And I don't think it's that bad. These guys were thrown into a furnace of fire. So obviously, I'm not saying that our culture is that way, but I am saying that we're moving towards a place where even if you're just quiet, even if you don't celebrate, more and more, you're going to stand out as being intolerant or backwards. And I love what you said, Abby, that the first thing that we need to do as believers is we need to study the Scripture. We need to make sure that if we're drawing a hard line on a difficult emotional issue, it's not because we don't want to change, but it's because what we see in Scriptures is what we're trying to hold true to. And so we need to have good biblical reasons for the views that we have and the convictions that we have around sexuality in general, and homosexuality, and some of the other alternative lifestyles, transgenderism, that we see being actively promoted in our culture today. Like we need to know what does the Scripture say, and this is why I view things the way that I do. So the flip side of that, or I guess the other side, like you said, is we probably all have friends who themselves identify as gay or lesbian, people that are in our circles. And even if you don't think you do, you probably do. So there's people that are real people. So there's this larger cultural issue that we need to navigate. And then I love what you said about the way we hold these views and the way that we communicate should still be loving It doesn't mean that we can change what God has said about this issue, but he's also said that we should be loving, and even in the scriptures, we find out that many, some of the early church believers had come out of a lifestyle of homosexuality. Specifically, you read about that in First Corinthians. So it's not a new issue that we're facing today. And there's a lot that the scripture can give us guidance on, but we're going to have to deal with it. You can't just ignore it. Like you said, you're going into Target with your family, and
Yeah.
and that's it. That's the last thing I'll say on this, guys, is that we're talking about this today, not because we want to make this an issue. We're talking about this because the culture has decided that this is going to be an issue, and that the culture itself is going to take a very definitive stance on this particular way of life. And it's a stance that's at odds with the faith that we've inherited through scriptures and as believers in Jesus. So we have to address it, not because we just want to get on a grandstand. We have to address it because you're going to be going into a store with your young kids and having a conversation about rainbows. So I hope those who are listening who might not view this the same way that we do will understand that, hey, this is not something that we're trying to attack those who have differing viewpoints on. We're responding to a message that is, this whole month being promoted specifically, and throughout the rest of the year as well.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys a lot. I appreciate you giving your thoughts early on that, and I kind of keep mine tight. But I totally was, intaking a lot of what you guys said. So just want to let you know I appreciate it a lot. And I would say in a different way, like this could be for me, it's almost motivating. People are so bold, and people are so, out there, and like, because I feel like we can do the same thing, because we've been talking about, this whole segment has been about, this whole podcast has been about going deeper with God, maxing out with God, like pushing it to the limit, so like, man, when I see the world around me, I'm inspired to tell them that, hey, Jesus is able, like he's more than a conqueror. Like there's no mountain that you can't climb with him, so no matter what it might be. And so every time I see something that's like you said, in opposition of our faith, or something that just goes against what we knew and believe, then it inspires me to go out there and be bold about our faith. And that doesn't mean that you can't be tactical, you can't be graceful and loving, but yeah, it makes me want to stand up by the truth that we believe in, and have faith in God, that he's going to move in people's hearts, So I think, I know that switching it up a little bit, I know the Jehovah's Witnesses, they get out super early in the morning, and like they're almost militant about their faith. And not that I'm coveting them or, getting jealous, but I'm like, they're doing that, like I can do the bare minimum and talk to my neighbor about the faith, and really engage folks about the faith. Yeah, I hope that helped, guys. And if you have any recommendations on topics for faith and culture too, we'd love to hear them. But I think this is a good place to wrap up.